Hey, what's up? Hello, long time no see. Welcome to 2023. We made it through another year, and I say we because I'm sure everybody had their ups and downs with 2022. As I said on Instagram the other day, here's to all of us having a great year with, I hope, many great things happening for each and every one of you. But I took my break in December, so I am feeling recharged, rejuvenated, ready to dig and dive into the year. It was the best decision I could have ever made to slow down everything in December and just kind of think about nothing. Think about nothing, do nothing, and just exist. And it worked out really great in my favor. I feel like I'm ready to get this year started, and I already have some things that are kind of tricky about 2023, but we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it through 2023. Speaking of feeling rejuvenated and recharged, I wanted to give y'all one final update. I did 2 previous videos where I talked about Magic Mind. So Magic Mind is a company that has developed this drink. It's like one little shot, which I've shown in previous videos, where it's made up of 13 carefully chosen ingredients that help with productivity, it helps with focus, it helps with energy, and it's all natural, which is great for someone like me who's trying to get as far away from coffee as possible. Coffee and my body, I am learning as I get older, just don't agree, but that has always been my go-to whenever I've needed energy. And so I ended up doing my 14 days of Magic Mind, and I can say, y'all, honestly, it was great. I felt rejuvenated. I was able to focus and concentrate. Even when I felt overwhelmed and stressed, there was a sense of balance almost, which is something that I definitely need at all times. So if you hadn't had the opportunity or the chance to check out Magic Mind, definitely give them a shot. I'll leave all the relevant information down in the description box, so you can check them out. I've definitely enjoyed trying out this product, and it is something that I definitely would even consider on my own in the future. All right, y'all, so this is what you've all been waiting for. These are the videos that everyone seems to love, where we kind of do these end of the year final wrap-ups, and we talk about our best and worst books of 2022. So I used to do these videos where I would break it down, and I would do best of for every genre. And your girl said, not this year. It's not gonna happen this year. I am gonna stick to my best of 2022 and my worst / most disappointing of 2022. Now, the whole thing about this is that I have separated my books from my comics, graphic novels, and manga. As you know, I have a separate channel, which is the Realm of Comics. Thank you to everyone who has taken the chance and the opportunity to go out and check the channel out and has subscribed and watched content and has commented and liked. I appreciate y'all so much. So what you're going to see in this video, where I'm talking about the worst of, and what you will see later on this week when I'm talking about the best of, you will not see any comics, graphic novels, or manga. I do have plans, and my lists have already been created for those lists, which will be on my other channel. So if you're particularly looking for those best of, worst of, I would highly recommend checking out that second channel and getting a scope of what I loved and did not love in 2022. So I did end up reading a lot of books. I read over 400 books this year, which is the most that I've ever read. It's the most pages that I've ever read. I think that I just really dived into what I was passionate about. I was picking up a lot of material that I liked. Every now and then I was picking up a dud, which is why we're here today. But for the most part, I really did enjoy what I read in 2022. I think this past year, 2022, I think had the highest average rating for me that I've had in previous years, so that's always a good thing. But I don't want to make this video too long, so we're just going to go ahead and jump in. I'm actually not even sure how many are on this list. I know for a fact that I did 20 best books, but I didn't count my worst, most disappointing books, which whatever. So the way that my list works when I say worst and most disappointing is that there are some books on this list that got 3-star ratings, but these are books probably that I was looking forward to, that I was really anticipating, and they did not deliver. And so with that being said, let's jump into the first one. And it is As Good as Dead. This is the 3rd book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which I loved books 1 and 2. Absolutely loved them. I read those in 2021, and I believe I gave both of them 5 stars. They were absolutely amazing. So I was so excited to jump into 2022 and pick up As Good as Dead. Ciao. It was a 3-star read, okay? The issue that I had is that there was some character development that I did not care for. So when I was listening to this book on audio, I got about 50% in, and it seemed like the mystery was wrapping up. And I was like, wait, hold on, sis, and then there's something about this not right. Like, we only 50% in. Why does it feel like this book is wrapping up? And it technically was, because something else happens and we have a character shift where our main character ends up doing something that is extremely out of character for her. And it threw me off because it just was out there. It was wild to me that I saw this main character do something that I would have never anticipated her doing, and not in a surprise shock way, but like, girl, that was out of character. You would never. And just, I think when you get so adjusted and acclimated to characters and their traits and how they move, especially in series, when something goes left and like extremely left, it throws you for a loop. And that's what this book did. It threw me for a loop. Now, someone has told me, I can't remember who, so if you're watching this and it was you, please let me know, that it might be worth me going back and rereading these physically and doing a closer read to get a better understanding of why our main character did what she did in the 3rd book, and that I would better be able to see it now that I have the general idea of the story in my head and I've read all 3. It might be better for me to go back and reread all 3. So I'm just saying right now, this is on this list. I do plan on rereading the series this year. So we'll see if my rating of this one will change based upon a reread. We'll see what happens. The next one that I have here is The Other Black Girl. I don't know why y'all love this book. Well, I don't know any black people who like this book. So there's much to be said about that. So I knew that this was not going to be a thing that I probably was going to enjoy, because I had talked to a few black reviewers prior to picking up the book, but holy shit. I did not like this book, and it's really fascinating because I can't really tell you much about this book without really spoiling it. It essentially is a black woman who's working for this company, for a publishing company, and she is the only black girl until another black girl pops up, and then things start getting awkward between the two of them, because she thinks it's going to be like, oh yeah, you know, I spot another black person across the room, we're going to instantly connect and the vibe is instantly going to be good. And then things are not the way that she anticipates. So I don't feel like this book was written for a black audience, because we were not in mind when this book was being written. And if you know, then you know. I don't know how to explain that to you other than just to say that black people were not in mind, I think, when this book was being written. And so there were just certain things about it that I did not like whatsoever. And a lot of it too, for me, just did not make sense. It just didn't flow the way it should have flowed. The narrative wasn't that great. And so I gave it 2 stars. And it's on this list. Kind of have a similar issue with the second one, which is a YA debut. The second book actually in this kind of companion series comes out in, I don't know what month it comes out. Maybe it comes out in January or February. But anyway, I know that the book is releasing this year. And it is the required reading for the disenfranchised freshman. And I thought this was going to be really interesting because we're looking at a black main character that's going to a PWI. I went to a PWI for my entire collegiate career, like getting my bachelor's and both of my master's degrees. I went to PWI. So interesting experience going to a PWI as opposed to an HBCU as a black person. And I thought that we were going to be able to capture that in this book. Instead, what we got was something that I felt was very like caricature. It just was so extreme, and it was a roadmap for non-black people in understanding what it's like to be black at a PWI. But the way that it was written was it just didn't include anything that is positive about attending a PWI. Like, there were Black student-led organizations that our main character could have joined, and it was just kind of like she wasn't really involved in any of that stuff. There is this guy who is extremely racist, and for some reason this one guy controls this entire school, which I felt like was unrealistic. And I'm not saying that you don't experience racism at a PWI, because honey, I had my fair share of it when I was at a PWI, but to not give this balance, like, it's not all bad. Like, it really is not all bad. And to not highlight what happens when there are Black students and there are like Black student unions at PWIs, what that does for your experience. I just felt like this was such an extreme version of what it's like to be Black at a PWI. And I got so personally offended, because I think that people are going to read the story and take away and think that that's the only experience that exists for a Black student at a PWI. And it's just unrealistic. It wasn't written for Black people, kind of like the other Black girl. I'm sorry, I said what I said. It is what it is. It wasn't written for Black people. This was written as a roadmap for people who don't know what it's like to be Black and attend a PWI. So this book was not for me. And I felt it in every single page, which is unfortunate, because I am Black and I did attend a PWI, and I'm questioning whether the author, what their experience was like, because it was a lot. And it was super unrealistic. So 2-star read for me there. Now, the next one that's on this list, I kind of knew that there was a possibility that I was not going to like it, but I wanted to be able to form an opinion of my own. And that is The Duke and I, which is the first book in the Bridgerton series. And I know that a lot of people have read this book. A lot of people watch the show on Netflix. I have watched a few episodes. And so I wanted to read the source material, because I know that some parts of it had been changed for the TV show. And there is this one scene that is in this book that has not it has not held up against the test of time. And I wanted to not necessarily experience it for myself, but I wanted to be able to give a critical review of it based on my own personal reading and not just what everyone had been saying. And so I read it, and I felt the way that I was going to feel about it. I felt like that scene was definitely tough to read. I felt like there was a lack of accountability. I felt like there was a lot of sympathizing with our heroine, but also her not taking accountability to how she made the hero feel. I felt like their relationship just was not good. It was not that great of a relationship. I mean, I think in some ways they got along well, but when it came to them making mistakes, they both made mistakes, and I feel like that kind of gets brushed over in terms of the heroine and what she did, and not negating what he did to her, but also just no one making her take accountability. And that was my biggest issue with the entire thing. And she's never forced to take accountability in the context of the book whatsoever. And so I definitely had a serious problem with that. And, but there were parts of it that I did enjoy. I said that there's a chance that I may continue to read the rest of the series, but I don't know when, and I am not rushing to do so. So it may just stop at book 1, or for some reason I may feel somewhat inclined to pick up the next book in the series. Who knows? And the next one is another one in the series, and this is The Sea Witch. This is part of the Wicked Villains series by Katie Robert. And one thing that I learned, because I read quite a bit of Katie Robert last year, one thing that I have learned in reading Katie Robert is that plot development is not her thing. Like, you want a good banging out scene, Katie is the way to go. You like spice, you like smut, you like a tangled in the sheets with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. Katie is the one to go to. But for plot development, I just don't think it's her strongest skill set. And not saying that she's not a good writer, but I just think that plot development is just not there. And in this one, I struggled a lot with the character development. So we have this tale that's kind of like The Little Mermaid with the Sea Witch, of course, our main character being based off of Ursula. And it is a poly romance. But the issue that I had with the character development is that, one, this book was a slog. Plot-wise, it was just so slow. And when we get to the final resolution, I'm like, damn, it took that long. And the book is really not that long, but it felt like it took forever to get to that point. And then I was like, we could have just did this from the jump. It just felt like we just did all of this for absolutely no reason. Then there was a character shift with our character who was supposed to be mimicked after Ursula, where she's like very, very hardcore, not really emotional. And then like a couple pages later, she's mushy. And I'm like, okay, I get building to that point, but it was such a harsh and drastic switch that it completely threw me off. And I was like, what am I reading? Because this is not it. This was not good. It just, I didn't enjoy that one, y'all. And it was so bad that I still haven't picked up the 6th book in the series so that I can transition over to kind of the companion series that takes place in the same world. And I don't know when I'm going to make that thing happen, because I'm just so nervous about these books not being that great, because they've been like average, like 3.5 stars for me. And I'm like, ugh. But this one was a 2-star. Of course, I'm going to have to add Here's the Deal by Kellyanne Conway. What can I say? It's Kellyanne. Were there parts of this book that I thought were good in terms of some points that she was making? Yes, but that accounted for like 5% of this book, and so the other 95% of the book I was miserable. And not miserable is a stretch. I had conflicting opinions about whatever she was discussing. So if you want to know why I had so many issues with that one, I'll leave the link to my full review of that one in the card symbol above. I do have some more political nonfiction reviews coming in the new year, which I'm excited to do. I have put several on hold that I've discussed in a live show, and people are like, really, Ash? And I'm like, I like hearing the trash from people's own mouth. That way, you know, they can't backtrack. It's in writing. Okay, so the next one that I have is probably one of my lowest rated books of the year, and it's Jumper by Melanie Crowder. This is a YA kind of like realistic fiction adventure story about a young girl who wants to be a fire jumper living out west to help put out fires, like forest fires. And I thought that that was going to be really, really interesting. I heard that there was type 1 diabetes representation in this one, as well as a female romance, potentially. Goodness gracious, I can't talk. Y'all, the only thing that I liked about this book was the descriptions of what it was like to be a jumper. Outside of that, I liked nothing about this book. Absolutely nothing about this book. I am not a diabetic, so I would implore you, if you can, to check out reviews from those who are diabetic. I know that there was a review out there of someone who is the mother of a diabetic. And I have been in a family full of diabetics, but still it helps when you're having someone who's lived that experience and not me, who's just, it's proximity. I struggled with this one so much because it just did not feel like any research was done for this. So me and my wild behind went digging because I wanted to know, like, what made Melanie choose to use a main character that has type 1 diabetes, because I couldn't find any reference of her having type 1 diabetes or even having a family member or somebody. And I found this interview with Melanie where originally the main character was supposed to, like, the outside conflict was supposed to be that she ends up with an injury that's going to prevent her from jumping. But when her editor saw it, the editor said, oh, let's give her diabetes. There's so many things wrong with that thought process that you want to increase the amount of conflict and you want it to be more interesting. So you just say, okay, I just want, just change the external conflict to the character having type 1 diabetes. So we just change things because we want it to sell better. We're including representation for the sake of including representation in the situation. And it showed. It showed so much in this book because it just felt like no research was done. The romance between the two characters felt forced. It didn't feel realistic whatsoever. I did not like this book. I have not read a book in a very long time where I'm just like, that's it. Yeah, no, 1-star read. I rarely ever give out 1 stars. Usually I'm a 2-star type of girl, but this one, it got 1 star for me. So there's that. Next was Kings of Be More. This was another disappointment for me because this one for me had so much potential. If you look at that cover, it just is beautiful black boy joy. Like, I was so excited by this, and it wasn't even about these 2 boys entering into a romance. They just were very close friends. They were best friends, and one of them is moving away, and this is kind of like their last opportunity to explore Baltimore together. Which in my mind, that just simplicity wise, that would have been enjoyable to read and hear about their adventures and deal with the conflict of having a best friend that is moving away. That in itself is heartbreaking. But when you go in expecting it to be black boy joy and these boys are just doing whatever they're doing and having fun, and then all of a sudden they just keep experiencing racism, it's like, all right, granted, I know it's a thing that happens, but at the end of the day too, like, there's got to be some sense of balance in publishing somewhere where every story that includes black kids is not solely centered on racism. Do I think that those stories are valuable? Yes. I think that everybody should have a space to communicate and voice their stories, their experiences, etc. But this one to me was supposed to read as black boy joy, and then the incidents of racism just felt thrown in to create this conflict, because we all know that black trauma sells. And so that's how this one read for me. And it was just disappointing. I still gave it 3 stars because I still think it was a well-written book. There were a lot of aspects of it that I really enjoyed, but it was a disappointment going in expecting something that was going to read as black joy, and 2 guys that are, you know, dealing with being separated and the black queer rep. Like, I was looking forward to all of that, only for it not to be that. And so that it was disappointing. The next one that I have is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I don't know how many times I can really talk about like Riley Sager just being pretty much a hit or miss for me. Like, there are 2 books of his that I've read that I've enjoyed, 2 books of his that I've read and have not liked, and his latest 2 releases I have not liked, including The House Across the Lake. Maybe it was my fault for listening to this on audio, but whoever kind of like checked off the audio should, I don't know what they were thinking. So it took me a while to realize that the main character was actually in her 30s and not in her 50s because of the audiobook narrator. It was very confusing. And as always with Riley Sager's books, they don't make sense to me sometimes. Like, when I think about it and I go back through the books and I think about like how the mystery, like the pieces of the puzzle that were given as readers prior to getting to the end of it, they never make sense. Well, these last 2 didn't make sense. Like, there's plot holes in this, and I struggle very much so with mysteries and thrillers that have plot holes, and that's what The Nice House on the Lake was. It was full of plot holes. It was unlikable characters. It wasn't enjoyable writing. I am very weary about picking up Riley Sager's new book that is coming out this year, because there's a 50-50 chance I may enjoy it and I may be like, yo, what the hell is this? The next one I have is One of Us is Dead, which is another thriller that was a complete disappointment. This read like Real Housewives with the drama and the messiness, and I was going for it until we got to the end of this book. It follows a group of women who live in they live in Atlanta or somewhere outside of Atlanta, maybe it's Buckhead. And, you know, they are messy. They're close friends. Some of them don't like each other. Some people want to be in position to other people. And so I was here for the messiness, here for the drama, because I enjoy that. It was giving Real Housewives vibes. And I was enjoying the story all the way up until the end. And I was like, first of all, this makes no sense. I'm not sure how you got from point A to point B. And for the extreme level of wildness that ending was, I don't think that the author handled it with enough care, and that really hurt my feelings, because I was like, this was enjoyable, and then we got to this point and I feel like you threw this in for shock value, and it's not something that you should throw in for shock value, because it's something that should be, you know, dealt with care, and it wasn't. And so there's that. Didn't like that one. Next, I have Be Real, Macy Weaver. I rarely ever have middle grade or children's books that are disappointing to me, because I do understand that I am reading it from the adult perspective and not from a children's perspective. So my rating and my reviewing is usually a little bit more graceful. Although, I mean, I do review, you know, honestly, but I am mindful that I am an adult reviewing a age category that's not intended for me. Be Real, Macy Weaver was something that I thought was going to be fun and vibrant, and you know, even with the description I was like, oh, this is going to be fun, and you know, we're going to learn some hard lessons in the end, but still good book. Absolutely not. I did not like this book. I still feel like I gave it 3 stars because I'm not the intended audience. I struggle so much with this book. The worst mother in middle grade history is in this book. So we are following Macy, who is not doing well with making friends. She's struggling at school. And so she thinks that if they just pack up and move, she'll be able to start fresh and, you know, make new friends. And her mom decides that she wants to go back to school because she doesn't want to be a bank teller her entire life. And she decides to apply to college. And then ironically, her mom is like, well, I'm not going to do online. Like, I want to go physically on campus. We're going to pack the whole family and move. Which to me is just kind of like, what the hell? Like, you're too old to be doing that nonsense like that. So they move, and then her mother's like, oh, I'm not going to live at home. I'm going to live on campus because I want the real dorm life experience. Sis, what? Like, listen, there are a lot of things that, you know, I think about, you know, if I was not a parent, what would I be doing at 31? Yes, it happens. I think it's natural and normal to think about the fact of, like, you know, where would my life be right now if I wasn't a parent? But to actually do stuff like that, where you are legitimately saying, oh, I'm going to move and live on campus to have the collegiate experience, and then lie to your daughter. Your daughter's asking you, can you come home? Can you spend time with her? And then you're lying and saying that you have to study. And then your child goes on social media and figures out that you're out having pizza with these people that you've met in college. And then her dad is never home because he has to work multiple jobs in order to provide for this mother to go to school. And so we have Macy just kind of by herself. And then Macy's not really likable because Macy lies about everything. But can you blame her? Because, I mean, listen, like, there's not really much going on at home. This was a really, really difficult book to read. And honestly, like, I did not enjoy it. There was so much gaslighting from the mother towards the end of the book. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is such an awful child-like mother relationship here. And granted, I know that it happens, I get it, but I didn't care for that one. I did not care for that one at all. I still gave it 3 stars because I think it is realistic, but it was not an enjoyable read for me. The next one that I have on this list is The Garden by Tomi Adeyemi. This is part of when Amazon does those like original short stories where if like you're a Prime reader or Prime member, you can read them for free. So I read like 3 of them, and Tomi's was the first one. Tomi cannot write. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Tomi can't write. I don't know what's going to happen because that 3rd book for the Children of Blood and Bone series is supposed to come out this year. Y'all, I don't know. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrendous. We are following this girl who goes, I forget even where she goes at this point, and she's supposed to be, I guess, following this journal, her mother's journal. I don't know if it's her mother's journal or what. And I really don't even know what the point of the story was. I can tell you that, but it was like interwoven with like really cringy poetry. Like a teenager wrote the poetry and stuck it in the book. I think that Tomi was so focused on trying to make this book stupidly literal, like lyrical, not literal, lyrical, that the plot made no sense. It just never went anywhere. And it's not because it was a short story, because the 2 others I read were solid. One was a 3-star, one was a 4-star. It's not the length. It's just that you can't write. And I am, For those of you who are going to read the third Children of Blood and Bone book, good fucking luck, because I will never do it. So this is a book I read in December. And it's not a long explanation. Okay, so I was watching The Hills just randomly. It was on Hulu, randomly watching it, and just started Googling stuff about them. And I realized that Audrina had published a book. And I was like, ooh, this is like tea, because I grew up with The Hills. I remember having watch parties of The Hills when I was a freshman in college. So I grew up watching The Hills. And so when Audrina decided that she was going to write a book, I was like, oh, sis, about to spill some good tea about this TV show. Nope. Y'all, this is probably one of the worst written books outside of Tommy's. This was one of the worst written books that I read in 2022. This book was horrible. It was awful. It was so bad. First of all, the book is like a little over 200 pages, maybe like 206, 209 max. The first 50 pages are about The Hills, and really Audrina doesn't really tell you much outside of which you probably already know. If you've been a fan of The Hills, if you watched the show, if you've seen the aftermath of the show, you would not be surprised by what Audrina has written. To be quite honest, it's not anything that's like mind-blowing or new. The rest of the book is really about Audrina's relationships and being with Justin Bobby. And then also, who hit on her in Hollywood, whether that was Leonardo DiCaprio, Chris Pine. Like, it's like I don't really care, because these weren't like relationships that she necessarily had with people. Like, I think the Chris Pine one was a little bit more on the relationship side, but the Leonardo DiCaprio one was kind of like a couple text messages, and it's like, okay, so are we name dropping the flex who hit on you? Because I don't know how she wanted that to come across, but it didn't come across well. I will say that I commend her for sharing the abusive relationship that she was in with Corey. I did not know. I knew her and Corey got married, they had a child, and she got divorced. And I remember Corey's first appearance on The Hills and subsequent appearances that he made, and that he was a part of her spin-off show that she had with her family. But I did not know that the abuse was that bad. Like, it was really, really bad. So I commend her for sharing that journey and also stepping into single motherhood, because I get all of that. I understand it. But Audrina just is not a writer. That's not her skill set. That's not her gift. And Simon & Schuster put this out because her name was attached to it, and they knew that she could make money and that they would make money off of it as well. It was not well written. It was really repetitive. There was one part where Audrina, after she left Corey, talks about how she went and she lived with her parents for 6 months, and then she ended up renting an apartment for her and her daughter. Literally 3 pages later, she says the same exact thing. There are moments when she can't stand Justin Bobby, and then a few pages later, she's like, she adores Justin Bobby. There was one part where she was like, production was just really evil and manipulative. And then a couple pages later, she'd talk about how production was like family. And it's like, I think when you wrote this, you were still even indecisive about your own feelings. And maybe you should have taken some more time to kind of flesh out how you felt about your feelings, instead of, just read like journal entries, which is fine, but it's like it could have used heavy editing, and nobody on the Simon & Schuster team thought to edit the book because it was not good at all. It was supposed to be written, I guess, like a conversational piece. It didn't deliver that way. It was clear that she barely had enough content to make that 200 pages, and I'm wondering if they should have just cut it down and let her release a small 150, 175 max page memoir. It would have been better off that way. But child, oh gosh, like Audrina could have kept that one. Like, that should have stayed in the diaries, not her experience with Corey. Like I said, I commend her for that, but the actual construction of the memoir stuff, it was not good at all. The last one that I have on this list is The Inheritance Games. I told y'all that this one was going to end up on here. I talked about this one in my 5-book series that I don't plan on continuing, so I will link that up in the description box above. But y'all, I didn't like this one either. Sis was not giving me games. This was the inheritance of teenage angst. That's what that book was. It wasn't The Inheritance Games. We were reading more about teenage angst, and I was waiting for like the complexity of the games and to be like mind blown. And I'm like, why do y'all love this book so much? Like, I'm missing something because so many people have adored it, but not me. It wasn't sitting right with my spirit, and so I'm definitely not going to be continuing with that series, although people love it and the wait at the library is absolutely horrendous for it. But to each his own, I guess. All right, y'all. So those are my worst and most disappointing books of 2022. As always, in the comment box below, let me know what your worst or most disappointing books of 2022 were. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. If you're interested in following me on social media or supporting the channel, the links are down in the description box below. And I will be back with my best of books this week, y'all. I'm more excited to film that one because it's pure joy and love and adoration for the characters and the author. So that's what my heart is gravitating towards. But I will see y'all in a couple days.